Welcome to The Hanley Effect, a podcast by the Hanley Foundation designed to educate, change minds, and save lives. Our goal is to inspire you, showcase our innovations, and change the conversation about addiction and mental health. Join us as we unravel stories of resilience, recovery, and hope.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Hanley Effect. How are you doing, Dr. Dosicle?
Good, Dr. D. How you doing
Good.
today?
Good to see you as always.
Good to see you.
Well, I am again. You know, I feel like I say how excited I am every single time.
Very excited today, though.
Does it get old that I say it a lot, though?
No.
All right.
No, unless people listen back to back, then I would think so.
That would be, but you think anybody
there could
binge
be a
listens?
Binge listening. Are we like Netflix where it just keeps going and then there's going to have to be legislation that says, do you really want to listen to the next podcast?
Because, you know, okay, so if anybody binge listens, feel free to send us an email. Remember, our email is podcast@hanleyfoundation.org and tell us that you do. And if there's enough people, we'll make like a skip the intro kind of thing.
Oh, that's a good idea. Good. Except for the fact that I don't want to skip my intro, just your intro.
I think if there was a skip John Diving button, everybody would be happy to push it. It's good.
We have someone very famous with us today. Very, very famous.
I am genuinely really excited to have this person. I've known this person for many, many years.
Me too.
Worked with her in many capacities.
Mm-hmm. She's brilliant.
She is brilliant, and she's famous, and she's talented and lovely. Mm-hmm. Dr. D, who do we have with us here today?
We have the therapist to the stars, Sarah Gentry, one of my favorite people on the planet. And I will tell our listeners that we have been sitting here talking to Sarah, and we did an entire podcast. It was so fun. It was so fun, and we forgot to record.
People really have been coming in and being like, come on, guys, we got to get started.
Yeah.
Sarah Gentry, how are you today?
I am wonderful. How are you today?
Great.
It's so fun to be with you guys.
We're going to have a blast.
I'm going to tell our listeners that Sarah said, can I wear jeans? And John and I said, jeans? Yes, you could wear jeans. And John, you wear the same pair of jeans every day. So, yeah, there you go.
If I find what works, I keep going with it.
It's your uniform.
It's my uniform, right.
So we let Sarah wear jeans, too.
Thanks for letting me be comfortable. I appreciate it.
I mean, you're glad I'm wearing shoes today, to be honest.
So are we.
So, Sarah, before, we want to talk about, the work that we all do. But first, we'd just love, for those that don't know you, obviously we know you, we love you, but we want to let other people get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us about you, what you do, and I'd love to know like your journey. What brought you to the work you do today?
Oh, wow. Okay. Sure. I'd be happy to do that. So you know me well enough to know I'm a licensed mental health counselor, blah, blah, blah. Yes, I treat a very specific clientele and love every second of it. It's the best job in the world, next to motherhood, of course. My journey to getting here, it's kind of interesting because I meet a lot of people who don't necessarily know what it is that they want to do with their lives, and I'm the exact opposite of that. So I've known I wanted to be a therapist since I was 14. So my experience, I love it too. Thank God.
Right?
Yeah, it makes sense. To know what you want to do and feel excited about it. It doesn't feel like work every day. It feels like you're doing something that's just like so fun and so rewarding. I grew up in a super complicated family system. It's like a really nice way to say dysfunctional. Lots of substance use, lots of mental health, poverty, a lot of violence. And escaped that family system. But along the way, I found my way into a counselor's office at about 14 years old. And it was the first time in my life that I felt really listened to. Wow. And it was such a pivotal moment. Like I earmarked it. I was like, wow, what a cool job. You like actually get to be present for people. He was the school counselor, but he was like the greatest.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. But interesting, I wasn't going to share this, but I'll share it just because I think people can understand it and relate to it. They had a group at school, and it was after school, and he's like, yeah, you should join the group. And I go to the group, and it's like, maybe like 12 teenagers, and we're all like sharing our feelings, and people were like really sharing, and it was pretty intense. And I left, and I was crying, and I got in the car with my mom. Yeah, true story. I wouldn't have told this if she was still living, but she's passed. So you can say things after your parents pass. But she said, where were you? You know, and I wasn't at practice, so I was somewhere else, right? Where were you? And I said, oh, they had this group and everybody was sharing their feelings and their experiences. And she called the school the next day and she said, you're never to go back there. Yeah, true story.
You're kidding.
No, that was the family system that I grew up in. Like when they talk about don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, it was like those were real rules. Most of the time unspoken. No, of course not.
Okay.
No, it wasn't worth suffering the consequences of that. You know, you just didn't talk about those things, you know, and it's still like that. Still to this day, that family system is very closed. And so, you know, talking about anything that happened within it was just not acceptable. Wasn't allowed. And it was so confusing because a lot of times that, you know, things would happen at night. You know, there would be some big argument, some big, you know, ruckus, you know, chaos of some sort. And then the next day you had to wake up and go to school, right? And be like captain of the cheerleading squad and president of your class and like pretend like everything was okay. So, you know, it was very confusing. It was.
So you eat your feelings, you drink your feelings, you smoke your feelings.
Well, for me, I didn't eat my feelings. I did the exact opposite of that. So I was all about control and perfectionism. And so I threw myself into being super thin and definitely disordered eating and performance. So it was, I literally, if you look through my high school yearbook, I'm literally the president of everything. And really, truly like that's where I got my validation or affirmation or tried worthiness in some way, you know? So in some ways it made me incredibly resilient. You know, and in other ways, it really destroyed me because, you know, nobody's perfect. That's impossible, right? So then you just never feel good enough. Never feel good enough.
The piece of this that really strikes me, and first, you know, for our listeners, they're going to say, wait a minute, Rachel, that sounds like your story that you've told. This is why you and I bonded and bonded early.
For sure.
But the patient population that you do such breakthrough work with, you know, a lot of this that you're talking about that were your experiences have really informed your expertise in this area.
Yeah, for sure.
And for those of you who don't know, you know, in South Florida, you know, Sarah Gentry is known to be that breakthrough therapist that is able to work with young women and middle-aged women and older women and help them really understand what's happened or why they haven't been able to talk about what has happened to them.
Sure. And interestingly enough, probably half of my clientele is executive men at this point. So that's happened through the years. You know, it's just kind of because those guys maybe didn't find themselves in counseling, you know, maybe 20 years ago. But, you know, executive coaching has become, you know, very acceptable. And the same way they have a coach for everything else, you know, they have coaches in terms of mental health. And so they are talking about what's going on. So that has become, I love it too. It's so fun to be able to, you know, work with the whole family or work with the couple or work with the, you know, individual on what they're, you know, each piece of the puzzle. It's like just such a joy for sure.
I've seen a lot of credentialed licensed therapists who, you know, have this kind of new coaching practice. And I've wondered at first, like, why would they do that? But you just answered the question. I mean, it is so much more accessible, especially if you have all that baggage of stigma to go to a coach where, you know, it might be the therapist and you're getting that work done. But I've wondered that for a while, because I see a lot of really well-credentialed, like yourself, therapists, and they talk about being a coach. And I was like, isn't a therapist fancier than a coach? But it's way more accessible. And I'm thinking about those, you know, middle-aged executive men.
Accessible and acceptable
in
a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Right.
And these aren't guys who necessarily, their families, their companies, people wouldn't say to them, you know, you need a coach. You know, I've actually had clients say to me, like, you know, people in their, you know, realm wouldn't necessarily say to them, oh yeah, of course you're going to see a coach. But they can wrap their heads around it and get excited about having somebody who's actually listening to them, who they can, spitball ideas off of. And you think about it, who do they have to talk to?
That's right.
They can't talk
Who's
to their
not
colleagues,
threatening.
right? Yeah, if they have a substance abuse issue and you really, think through, you have a high level executive, they can't necessarily talk to a colleague about that, and they're not going home to talk about it because, there could be all sorts of issues around that as well. So they need somebody who they can really process with. So
I want Sarah to just talk for a minute about the work that you did with Lisa Najavits.
Sure.
This was remarkable when I learned about this, and so I just wanted to spend a minute on this.
Sure, and tell everybody who might not know who Dr. Najavits is.
You get credit for that, Dr. Dosical, for sure. You really do, because when I first went back to Hanley, you had said, if you could have somebody come and speak, who would you have speak? And it was Dr. Najavits, who specialized in a technique called seeking safety through Harvard University. And so she created a trauma technique for present-focused coping skills. So essentially, instead of diving back into the trauma narrative, you're staying focused on what's happening in the present and how can we create a set of skills, a set of tools, so that we can help keep you grounded and develop interpersonal skills and emotional regulation and distress tolerance. And, they're really things that are so simple that,
powerful.
So powerful and so easy to teach. And, it was such a fun experience to be able to work with her and really understand the work that she was doing and then teach it to other people.
So that's the key. So you're so humble. So I'm just going to say, so Lisa was so taken with Sarah, her expertise, her ability to talk to a group, teach a group, lead people, that you actually became one of her trainers across the country, didn't you?
I did. I still have a hard time admitting to that. That's true. And if she was here, she would say that probably the thing that was most difficult for me was accepting the fact, like imposter syndrome, accepting the fact that she would actually want me to share her message. I never got used to it. I did it for several years and I really never could wrap my head around it. And she's like the most affirming person on the planet. So I should have accepted it, but it was really hard. Yeah, that was really hard because it was a big deal. And she's so great.
Huge deal.
Yeah, it was great.
Huge deal.
I love that though, because you talk about resilience. So I'm still at that, at that 14-year-old point. I'm wondering where, because at some point clearly you came to, not only, supportive therapy, but becoming the therapist that you are. But so often when we think about resilience as if it's some resolution and like erasing of our scars or our and it's not. It's becoming who we are with our foibles and our scars and our struggles and all those things. So, people look at you, they might look at you from the outside and go, oh my God, great. Boy, whatever was going on at 14, boy, she's fixed it all now. And she's, but we don't ever, that never stops. And so I loved that, just that idea of, I still have that. It's hard to admit that, that Lisa Najavits would see that. And yet you live and walk in that all the time. And that's what, when I hear resilience, that's what I think about, resilience. It's not, I wish resilience was all of the baggage is gone.
Yeah, like an event.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you shed it and it's no longer there.
Right. But it's more of, there is a healing process that's continually happening. And I love that. It's beautiful.
I think it's so important for people to understand that you're just constantly unpacking it. I always thought therapy was going to be like this event. Like I remember saying to various therapists in my own life, and yes, therapists go to therapy. Good therapists go to therapy. Yep. Just like dentists have dentists, we would hope. But I've had therapists, yell, so frustrated and yelling, and I'm like, when is this going to stop? I'm so sick of talking about this. And unfortunately, part of the process of resiliency is unpacking it and then unpacking it and then unpacking it. And each time you do that, you get a little bit stronger and it makes a little bit more sense. And then the narrative becomes clearer and you start to take back your journey, you know, but it's a long road for sure.
Yeah.
So can I ask you, can we come to like how did you get from that place where it shut off to you? Therapy, boom, that's not good. You can't do that. So you have to be perfect.
Yeah.
How did you eventually come back to that?
So it's so interesting because Hanley's such a huge part of that. And anybody who really knows me knows that that's such a huge part of my journey. But going to Palm Beach Atlantic, I found my way into Hanley as an intern. And before I accepted or was even, you know, offered any type of an internship position, I had to meet with the education director, Jim Dopp, who I'll never forget. And he said to me, "Why would you want to be a substance abuse counselor?" And I was like, I knew nothing about that process. You have to remember, this is like pre-internet, like there was no access to information. You know, all I knew about substance use was, you know, some pretty negative stuff, some pretty awful experiences. And I looked at him and I said, I want to be part of the solution. And
so powerful.
It was like, you know, it became my mission. I want to help people not have to go through that. And when they've been through that, I want to help them get to the other side. And like, that was like the beginning of, you know, really seeing it come full circle, right? Because it was such an issue in my family and it wasn't acceptable. It's still not acceptable. Still to this day, I don't think they really understand what I do for a living. They really don't get it, you know, which is kind of sad when you think about it. Sometimes you can't help the people that are closest to you, you know, but it came full circle by coming there at 22 years old and all of a sudden being surrounded by mentors and these amazing, amazing people who were just, the staff was so loving and they basically raised me. They reparented me in a different way, you know, and taught me that it was okay.
What an amazing experience.
Oh, what a blessing. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that, really, if you think about it.
So you're taking a job to be in a healing position, but you're actually through the work and the mentorship.
Yeah.
There's the power of mentorship and the power of mentoring is for both the mentor and the mentored.
Sure.
But it's funny. My story is very similar. I'd been at Hanley for 20 years and I came in a pretty broken place in my life. So I can completely relate to that process of that mentoring and stuff. It's a special place.
It's a special place. And you know, how long have we known each other? For decades now. And, you know, I mean, Rachel probably doesn't know this, but I was the Sunday school teacher to one of John's daughters a million years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
That's right.
I love that.
And so it just comes full circle. It's like, here's this place where people just, you know, they want so desperately to help. And that includes the staff. It was very, you know, just safe. It was just very safe.
Just so you know, she had a VW bug with a little yellow sunflower or a little flower in the window.
Okay, I really believe that.
Not a surprise at all.
It's a true story.
It is.
What color was the bug?
Blue.
It was blue, light blue.
Of course it was.
Of course
it was.
That's
great. So, you know, thinking about, if we can switch a little bit.
Sure.
You know, thinking about families and how families, you know, families are so powerful. They're the most, for most of us, they're the most powerful system in our lives.
Sure.
And a lot of families are dealing with people who are struggling with addiction and other mental health concerns. And one of the things I know you do a lot is you work with families to help them get their loved ones help.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wish that if, you know, it was as simple as if you love the person, you're going to do the right thing and you're going to help them get to, but it's not, especially when someone has mental health concerns, when they have addiction. It is so, families, the most brilliant, the most educated, the most, you know, families just don't know what to do.
Sure.
So what's that like, helping people kind of move in the right direction to get people their loved ones help? What kind of barriers do you see, and what kind of strengths do you see?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it's so complex. You know, when you think about what families are up against, and when I say families, I don't even just mean somebody's biological family, because especially when you're dealing with an affluential clientele, their family might include their staff. It might include, executives that work very closely with them. So there could be all sorts of barriers and issues that come along with that. And also, it could be the spouse of a loved one, or the parent of a loved one, or the child of a loved one. So it's such a broad term, right?
Right.
So one of the things that I think is so important is being able to come from a place of not having judgment about their part in the process, because so often family members end up feeling, and it might not necessarily be the reality of the situation, but they might feel judged. They might feel like they're being questioned about how the person got to this place, what their part was along the journey.
Good point.
And that's going to make them apprehensive, right? And then, you have the fact that most people who have been down this road before, if it's not their first experience with treatment or with therapy, they might have had some negative experiences along the way. So going back to Dr. Najavits, one of the things she taught me, many years ago, was people's mistrust of the system. And at the time, I didn't have, a real true understanding of that, because the same way Hanley was kind of a safety, concubine, it kept me, kind of protected from all the things that can go wrong out there in the world, because we did such good work. There were a lot of people that weren't necessarily doing good work. And so by the time the client reaches your office, or reaches, a bed in your program, they may have had some really negative experiences. And so the family can be very, mistrustful of helpers. They might have been hurt by the people who are supposed to be helping, right?
You see it all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So they might feel judged, coming from a place of empathy and compassion, and really being able to listen to what their experience is. Sometimes that can make all the difference in the world. They just want to know that you hear them.
Yeah.
Here's who my child was before, and here's who my child is now. It's not uncommon for families to share pictures with me and stories of what the person was like pre-addiction, pre-mental health, so that I understand, who it is that I'm trying to, serve. And that's so powerful.
That's so powerful.
It's really.
Therapists we spend so much time in the pathology.
Yeah.
What's happening right now? What is going wrong right now?
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, when you're working with a family, you're saying, tell me who this kid is, because you're not you're getting hurt by this right now, but what you're really hurting is that you want this person back. And we'll hear that language a lot.
Absolutely. Right. And the hard part about that with mental health is they may never be that person again. And helping a family get to a place of radical acceptance with regard to a mental health issue, that is some really difficult work,
What is that like a little, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think there might be people listening who say, what does radical acceptance mean? What does it mean that?
And it doesn't mean loss of hope.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And
not at all. But what it might mean is recognizing how unfair the situation is, how out of control the situation is, how much it doesn't align with your own personal value system, wrapping your head around that and getting to a place where you can say, I don't like this, I disagree with this, I think it's wrong, and I need to accept that that's the reality of what I'm dealing with right now.
Yes.
Which is so huge. It's so huge. It's almost, an impossible feat. And then you take, a group of people, especially parents. I think of the parents that I work with, and myself as a parent, and you're both amazing parents. And it's like to tell a parent that they have to give up a little bit, and they have to let go a little bit, and they have to recognize they don't have all the answers, and I might not have all the answers. That's really difficult. Yeah. And hard for them to accept, for sure. Hard for me to accept. I want to be able to fix everything.
100%.
What about parents of loss? Talk about some of the work that you do with parents of loss.
Yeah. So powerful. I mean, it's such an awful experience, and grief and loss has been something that I've gotten more and more specialized in through the years because of my own experiences and watching families and helping them through that process. It is complicated loss. It's complex grief when you think about it, because when you're having to help a family, or you're blessed to help a family, I should say, because it's really a gift to be able to do that, but helping them through the understanding that they did everything that they could, right? Really wrapping their head around that, you know, forgiving themselves for decisions they might have made with the knowledge that they had at the time, you know, and really being able to let that person go. Oh my goodness. You know, it can be a long road.
Yes.
For sure.
When I think about that idea of grief and complex grief, it almost makes total sense that you would become, or if you do this long enough, because part of what dealing with any chronic illness, especially addiction, is that we'll lose some people. But even when things get well, even when everything goes well, we change our norm. And when we change our norm, it upsets, and there's almost there's a loss of normal, and there's a similar grieving process. Do you find sometimes?
Yeah, especially headed into the holidays. Like, I was thinking about that, headed into the holidays, and you know, helping families. I always, like, this is a very, very busy time of year for me in terms of my practice, because I'm helping families really come to a place of just, you know, accepting the new norm, whatever that looks like. Yeah. And that is really upsetting. It can be so hard for people to really, you know, get to a place where they can create new experiences and also understand where their family member and loved one is at. Yeah.
Well, and grieving just what you thought was going to happen. I mean, think about something as simple as divorce. We hear about divorce all the time. It's painful because you didn't go into the marriage thinking that there was going to be a divorce.
The loss of the dream.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's
the loss of the dream.
That's right.
Yep, and that goes for, you know, your child who might be struggling with substance use and mental health, or your spouse and what that looks like, of course.
Yes.
So as we we're coming into our last few minutes. And there's so many things right now. My brain's a little, like, there's so many things that I want to talk to Sarah about now. You have to come back. Okay. Right. We have to do this again.
In jeans.
We'll do this again.
In jeans.
And possibly slippers.
Could we do flip-flops?
Slippers, some bombas.
I'm not a big flip-flop wearer, but I'll do slippers.
All right. And whatever you just said.
Bombas,
whatever that is.
Oh, I love bombas.
Yeah.
Love bombas.
They're slippers. Okay. We'll bring you a pair.
Yes, you'll love those.
It'll be a good present.
Are you shocked that I don't know what that is?
Have in my office. You know them. They're the multicolored slippers.
The fluffy things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
like heaven on your feet.
They're like heaven on your feet. I love
that. This podcast brought to you by.
That's right.
Our
Can we get some money from them? So I'm sitting here going, oh man, I just let this whole thing go sideways. But you know what? It gives people. This is actually what happens when we're not on.
When the three of us get together.
Yes.
What we love to do, what I'd love to do is just give you the last few minutes and think about.
No pressure.
No, it's a drum solo. It's a drum solo, basically.
Okay.
No, I just want to ask you to think about what you would want families of people who are suffering to hear, to know, what you would want people who are currently suffering with addiction or mental health concerns.
Yeah.
What are the things that you would want them to know, and what are you things that something you would want their family to hear from you today?
Yeah. Well, you're not alone. Number one, there are people out there who really are passionate, who want to help you, who will come alongside of you and create a plan. And that plan might fail, and then we'll come up with a new plan, which is the reality.
I love that too.
Thank
Talk
you.
about resilience
it's
and
the truth.
flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of, okay, so one of the first questions I ask is, what have you tried so far? I want to know what you tried so far so that I don't repeat myself, and how can we try it in a different way? Yeah. And you're going down a road that you have to take good care of yourself in the middle of all of this, which is almost impossible, but definitely, you're capable of doing it, but you're going to need some cheerleaders on your side. because your self-care is going to be paramount coming alongside your family member for sure.
Yes. Yes.
I love that. It's been interesting. We've, I don't know, done half dozen different podcasts and such. And I always love to ask people that. And you almost to the person, it's that message that you are not alone.
Yeah.
And I love that as a parent who went through this, right?
Yeah.
And still struggles with some of these things.
Sure.
I love that we'll make a plan and it might not work.
It might not work.
But we'll be here.
Yeah.
You won't be alone. We'll make another one. We'll
Yeah.
continue. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is.
Sarah Gentry, it has been lovely having you.
Thank
This
you.
went by too fast.
It really did. It did. I think we need to. Okay, so to our listeners, we want to make this an hour. Tell us what you think.
More emails.
We're going to get emails as long as John Dybin doesn't talk so much. Right.
Oh my
Well,
gosh,
we're
you're
skipping
great.
your intro. You forgot.
Right, but there's still, I talk a lot.
Well, I don't know.
You're great. You're great. Thanks for having me.
Sarah, we love you.
Love
Keep
you
doing your work.
Thank
You're
you.
making such a difference.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. Thanks, Dr. D, for being here.
Thanks, Dr. D.
And I was thinking about the Click and Collect the Tappet brothers.
Oh, I
don't,
was this morning,
Don't drive
too.
like my Dr. D. Sorry. It's
Brought to you by, now I forget.
Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.
Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. That was it.
And we
Which
have
click? Am I click or clack? I can't remember.
You're whichever one you want to be. You're the boss.
I'll be click.
You'll
can
be Clack. I'll be Clack. We want to say thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on The Hanley Effect.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for the Hanley Effect. To learn more about our programs, visit hanleyfoundation.org or call 844-502-4673.